You've been lied to. Not a little lied to, not fine print lied to. I'm talking full scale, emotional, socially approved financial manipulation because you've been told your wedding day is the most important day of your life. And for 90% of people, it's actually the most expensive middle class mistake they will ever make. Here's the brutal truth: a wedding is supposed to be one day. One day. But the bill? That thing can follow you for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes longer. And the sick part is, the second you tell a vendor the magic word, wedding, the meter starts running. Flowers? More expensive. Photography? More expensive. Venue? More expensive. Cake? Somehow spiritually transformed into a luxury asset. That's what I call it. The wedding tax. Because the second you say, this is for a wedding, the price doesn't just rise, it mutates. And let's say it clearly. When somebody hears wedding, sees your emotions, sees your family pressure, sees your fear of judgment, and then doubles the price, he's robbing you. I know that sounds harsh. Good. It's supposed to, because soft language is how people stay broke. You are not buying table linens. You are buying approval. You are not buying centerpieces. You are buying the illusion that if the party looks expensive, the marriage must be meaningful. That is the scam. And if nobody in your life has said this to you, let me be the bad guy. Stop falling for it. A $30,000 wedding is not romantic if you can't invest. It is not classy if you're swiping credit cards. It is not once in a lifetime if the debt hangs around longer than the floral arrangements. And I need you to hear this early. The financial system loves when you make emotional purchases with long-term consequences. Because banks make money. Vendors make money. Social media platforms make money. The only person who loses is the couple. That right there is the video. Everybody sees the party. Nobody sees the retirement account that never got funded. Everybody sees the dress. Nobody sees the down payment that got vaporized. Everybody sees the photos. Nobody sees the financial drag that starts the marriage at a disadvantage. And that's why I call it a tax. Not because the government charged it, because the culture did, and you paid it voluntarily. Let's talk psychology, because this is where people get defensive. They say, it's our special day. Sure, but your money doesn't care about your Pinterest board. Your brokerage account does not get emotional. Your future self does not get a rebate because the string quartet sounded magical. And this is the core problem. That's the battle, and most people lose that battle before they even get married. Why? Because your brain is broke. Not literally, behaviorally. You've been trained to confuse price with love. You've been trained to confuse spectacle with commitment. You've been trained to believe that if the room looks expensive enough, the relationship will feel more legitimate. That is nonsense. A marriage is built in the boring years, not in the photo booth, not in the sparkler exit, not in the imported napkins. And let me say the thing people whisper but never admit. For a lot of couples, a giant wedding is just a massive ego purchase. That's it. A giant, socially approved, emotionally decorated ego purchase. It is a performance, a luxury flex in formal wear. A one-day audition for people you don't even like that much. You know who I'm talking about. The cousin you see twice a year. The coworker you invited because it would be awkward not to. The college friends you haven't spoken to in 18 months. The aunt who will criticize the food no matter what you serve. And somehow you're spending thousands to impress them? That's not celebration. That's insecurity with catering. And then there's the social media poison. I call it the friend tax. Your friend had the vineyard wedding. Then another friend had the luxury rooftop wedding. Then Instagram showed you a slow-motion aisle shot with drone footage and candles and a live saxophone player for some reason. Now your brain starts saying, well, we can't do something small. Why not? Because Brittany had ice sculptures? Because Josh rented antique chairs? Because some influencer you've never met had a wedding content creator? This is how middle-class people stay middle class forever. They copy each other's consumption. They inherit each other's bad financial decisions. They normalize dumb money moves because everybody's doing them. Listen carefully. Comparison spending is one of the fastest ways to sabotage wealth, and weddings are comparison spending on steroids. Because it's not just what you want, it's what your parents expect, what your friends expect, what your feed tells you is normal, what the industry tells you is timeless. No, it's expensive. That's what it is. And if you need a truth bomb here, here it is. The quality of your marriage is not tied to the price of the party. A bad marriage with expensive flowers is still a bad marriage. A strong marriage with tacos in a backyard is still a strong marriage. Your vows don't compound. Your money does. Now let's do the part nobody wants to do. Math. Because feelings are loud, but math is undefeated. Let's compare two people. Person A spends $30,000 on the wedding. One day, done. Money gone. Person B says, we're not doing that. They spend $5,000. Simple ceremony, good food, people they actually care about. And they invest the remaining $25,000 into what I call their shadow portfolio. That's the invisible pile of wealth your life could have had if you stopped lighting money on fire to look successful. And let's use a very plain, very boring, very powerful assumption. A 10% annual market return. Not magic, just long-run stock market math. Here's what happens. That $25,000 invested at age 25, left alone for 30 years, turns into about $436,000. Read that again. Not because you did anything genius, not because you day traded, not because you found crypto on Reddit, because you didn't spend it on chair covers. Now let's take the full $30,000 wedding cost. If that same $30,000 had been invested at age 25 and left alone for 30 years, it becomes about $523,000. There it is, the $500,000 wedding. Not because the wedding cost $523,000 on the invoice, because that's what the decision actually cost your future. This is what opportunity cost means. It's the financial ghost attached to every dumb purchase. The price you paid is not the real price. The real price is what that money would have become if you had the discipline to keep it. That's why I call it the shadow portfolio, because most people never see it. They only see the event. They never see the alternate timeline where they started adulthood with a fully funded investment account. Let's make it even realer. That $436,000 from investing $25,000 could mean a huge chunk of retirement already handled, more flexibility to work less later, a real down payment, a business launch fund, a cushion during layoffs. Freedom. That's what you spent. Not just cash, freedom. And before somebody says, well, we deserve to enjoy life, let me stop you there. I'm not saying not celebrate. I'm saying stop pretending there's no trade-off. There is always a trade-off. If you spend big on one day, you are choosing to delay options later. That's the adult conversation. And by the way, if we use a more conservative 8% return, the numbers are still nasty. That same $25,000 grows to about $251,000. The full $30,000 becomes about $302,000. So even with a lower assumption, you are still talking about a $250,000 to $500,000 consequence. Either way, the math is brutal. And here's the line I want burned into the screen. If you are 25 and you spend $30,000 on a wedding, you are not making a $30,000 decision. You are making a $300,000 to $500,000 decision, depending on the return, depending on the timeline, depending on whether you had the guts to say no to the performance.
That money doesn't care if your guests were impressed. It wants to compound. So let it. Invest it. Now let's make this worse. Because for a lot of couples, the money isn't even sitting there in cash. They don't have $30,000. So what do? They enter the payment trap. They finance the fantasy. Credit cards, personal loans, buy now, pay later energy in a tuxedo. And this is where the story stops being dumb and starts being dangerous. Because now you're not just losing opportunity cost, now you're adding interest. If part of that wedding sits on a credit card at around 20% plus APR, the bill starts multiplying in the wrong direction. That's anti-compounding. That's wealth destruction. And what happens right after the wedding? Real life. Rent.
Car insurance, student loans, emergency vet bill, job stress, moving expenses, maybe a baby, maybe a house. Maybe one person wants to change careers. Maybe one of you gets laid off. But you can't move. You can't breathe. Because you started the marriage wearing golden handcuffs. That's what debt does. It makes your life look polished from the outside, while quietly removing your freedom on the inside. You can't take risks. You can't leave the miserable job. You can't start the business. You can't relocate for a better opportunity. You can't aggressively save for a house. Why? Because your special day is still on the statement, still charging interest, still taking up mental space, still owning part of your future. And I need to say this clearly. The finish line is fake. People act like the wedding is the grand ending, the movie climax, the reward. That financially, it's often the start of the hard part. You think the wedding is the launch of your life, but if you finance it badly, it becomes the launch of your financial prison. The confetti falls, the DJ packs up. The guests go home, and you are left with the invoice. That's the part nobody posts. No one posts the minimum payment. No one posts the argument about money 3 months later. No one posts the sinking feeling when you realize you spent a down payment on a seating chart. This is why I'm so aggressive about this topic, because it's not just about saving money. It's about protecting the early years of marriage from preventable stress. Money fights are real. Financial pressure is real. And starting your marriage with consumer debt for a party is like starting a road trip by slashing your own tires. Can you still get there? Maybe. But why would you do that to yourself? So what do you do instead? Simple. Mind the gap. That's the move. Not never celebrate. Not elope in total darkness. Not become a spreadsheet robot. Just mind the gap between what the wedding industry wants you to spend and what actually matters to you. That gap is your future. That gap is your investing seed. That gap is your margin. That gap is your peace. Reframe the wedding. It is a celebration, not a status symbol. It is a moment, not a measuring stick. It is not proof of love. It is not proof of maturity. It is not proof you made it. What proves you made it is this. You started marriage with assets instead of liabilities. You started with a brokerage account instead of a balance transfer. You started with momentum. Let's go back to that $25,000. If you put that into a brokerage account at the beginning of your marriage, you activate the snowball effect immediately. Now your money is working while you sleep, while you work, while you travel,
while you build. That is how you create wealth without burnout. Not by grinding yourself into dust for the next decade because you overspent on one day, but by giving your future self a head start. And that's really what wealth is. Options. The option to work less. The option to say no. The option to walk away from toxic situations. The option to buy time back. A fancy wedding gives you photos. A funded portfolio gives you leverage. Pick carefully. So if you're engaged, or you know somebody engaged, send them this video before they make a 6-figure lifetime mistake disguised as romance. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Shrink the guest list. Cut the nonsense. Protect the balance sheet. Build the marriage, not the performance. And if you got value out of this, subscribe. Because this channel is for people who are done being loyal to outdated traditions that keep them broke. Done confusing looking rich with being free. Done paying the emotional markup. Stop funding the system that profits from your insecurity. Stop worshiping one-day flexes. Start building real wealth. And if nobody else will tell you, I will. The best wedding gift you can give your marriage is not a bigger party. It's a stronger financial future. See you in the next one.